we subconsciously adjust our past views to fit the present ones to kind of avoid any embarrassment. If Adolf Hitler had won, then Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin would have been war criminals. All history is rubbish because it is written by the victorious. Yo guys, namaskaram. So, Debukidastak is a platform where we talk on mental health and a lot of other sensitive issues, right? So basically, the entire aim of this channel is to build a community around sensitive issues and make people feel comfortable about themselves. So basically, if you're new here, consider subscribing. Our mission is to empower you with ideas to live smartly and joyfully. The world is full of suffering, but let us increase our competence to deal with things joyfully. And just a tip, so all these are basically conversations, so I might suggest that you should watch these conversations at 1.5x. You can increase the playback speed through the button in the settings. Cheers and enjoy watching. यो गाइस नमस्कारम. सो आज हम बात करेंगे मेमोरी के बारे में. सो बेसिकली माय आर्गुमेंट is like why you shouldn't trust your memory and prove you certain things about memories with certain studies and case studies, and then the choice is yours, of course. So I would like to start by this writer by the name of George Orwell. He had written this book called 1984, in which he talks about Winston Smith. So he's a protagonist, and he is like a very diligent mid-level worker, and he works at this Ministry of Truth. So unki job, like his job was to update any old newspapers, documents, articles, and every written source, and write the newer version of history. उसका काम बड़ा important है because revising the past creates the illusion of greatness and helps the government to secure absolute power. So this book is very famous among a lot of literature students and a lot of intellectuals per se. So what he decides to do, like he secretly hates the ruling party and then kind of dreams to do a rebellion. And इसी बीच like he also begins a relationship उनकी colleague है Julia. So as per this story, इसमें the ruling party is so strict that they keep a watch on each and every action of the citizens. So all the citizens are expected to just walk in a straight line, have no freedom of thought, nothing. So as the government is saying them to do, they have to do that. So not even this habit of, let's say, maintaining diaries or independent thinking. So what he does, he keeps a forbidden diary, and then because of his will to resist against the ruling party, he tries to find some common groups or communities around. Then later he finds out that there's this community called the Brotherhood. However, soon, once he contacts the Brotherhood and थोड़ी थोड़ी चीज आगे बढ़ती है, he realizes that he's also a party agent, and then Smith भाई हमारे arrest हो जाते हैं. एंड देन मतलब उनको काफ़ी टॉर्चर किया गया, साइकोलॉजिकल मैनिपुलेशन की कि क्यों तुम्हें गवर्नमेंट प्यार करनी चाहिए, दिस काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स. So that's a core premise. You should definitely read this book if you get a time. Now, I want to talk about the concept of flash pulp memories. Just to give you a basic definition. So, what this means basically is that it is a vivid, enduring memory associated with a personally significant and emotional event, often including such details as to where the individual was or what he or she was doing at that time of event. So कोई भी काफी इमोशनली इंट्रीगिंग इवेंट हो आपके लिए, लेट्स से किसी की लव वन की मैरिज और दोस काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स. सो इफ आई आस्क यू, ठीक है आपने उस दिन क्या पहना था, you might be able to remember with utmost accuracy. So, people often believe that such memories have the quality of a photograph taken at the moment they experience the event, and they believe with high confidence that these memories are accurate. So, I'll just give you some case studies and proof as to why they are not accurate. So, if we move back to history, there are just like two specific incidents which I would like to bring out. So the first one was like in 1973. There was this US political scientist, Gregory Marcus, and he asked roughly about 3,000 people to share their opinions on controversial political issues such as legalization of drugs and those kind of things. क्योंकि उस time US में बहुत ज़्यादा चीज़ें चल रही थी. So their responses ranged from fully agree to completely disagree. So 10 years later, he interviewed them again on the same topics and also asked that what they had replied 10 years earlier. And the results were almost stunning. What they recalled disclosing in 1973 was almost identical to their present day views. And वो काफी ज्यादा दूर थे उनके जो ओरिजिनल रिस्पॉन्सेस थे. So this is just from political science. So let's take another example from psychology. So there was this professor called Ulrich Neisser. So he was like one of these pioneers in the field of cognitive science, and he investigated our memory over the long term. So इनका काफी ज़्यादा contribution है इस चीज़ में. So in 1986, the day after the explosion of the Challenger space shuttle, he asked students to write essays detailing their reactions. 3 years later, he interviewed them again. Now the twist. So less than 7% of the new data correlated with their initial submissions. In fact, 50% of the recollections were incorrect in two-thirds of the points, and a stunning 25% kind of failed to match even a single detail. Nicer, this scientist then took one of these conflicting papers and presented it to one of its owners. And what she said, I know it's my handwriting, but I couldn't have written this. End quote. So these are like very two star studies which points out the will with which we kind of trust our memory. So just to give you some examples from daily life, I'll take this example of a breakup. Let's say अभी आपका recent breakup हुआ है. So then you start seeing, मतलब आप ना एक romanticize करने लग जाते हो उस person क्योंकि उसमें सब best था. Like you kind of start realizing, oh, how perfect the other person was. You let go of all the good things. या मतलब आपकी ब्रेन ऑल्टर करता है आपकी करंट जो आपकी मेमोरीज है आपकी करंट रियलिटी के हिसाब से ताकि आप पेन से कोप अप कर पाए. सो दिस इज जस्ट वन स्मॉल एग्जांपल. नाउ द क्वेश्चन कम्स इज, okay, with all these studies, novels and those kind of things, how it impacts us and what we can do. So as you might have seen that we subconsciously adjust our past views to fit the present ones to kind of avoid any embarrassment. The reason is because it's a very clever coping strategy we have come up with, because no matter how tough we are, admitting to our own mistakes even to ourselves is a very emotionally challenging task. मतलब हमारी फट जाती है कि हम कैसे गलत हो सकते हैं. Like our ego drives us. हम कैसे गलत हो सकते हैं. Now you might be saying, oh, this is shit. Shouldn't we be honest with ourselves and scream at joy every time when we realize we are wrong, right? मतलब common sense तो ये कहती है कि यार हमें गलतियों से सीखना है, आगे बढ़ना है. This common प्रचलन या जो common advice चलती है. After all, these things ensure that हम ये गलती कभी वापस नहीं करेंगे, and we would essentially take a step forward in life. But in reality, you don't. So it is safe to assume now that half of what you remember is wrong. Our memories are riddled with inaccuracies, and our faith in them can be harmless or lethal. So lethal in a lot of cases. So I'll just quote one TEDx talk. So I'll just link it here in the iCard. So you can just check it out. But just to give you a crust, so this person, Elizabeth Lofts. So she vividly points out testimonies of eyewitnesses and पुलिस से काफी ज्यादा follow up करते हैं to kind of just go in depth on a case. So जिन लोगों ने identify किया था जो perpetrator था of the crime, he was a completely different person than the actual person who committed it. So like to trust such accounts without any additional investigation is reckless. So even if the witnesses are adamant that they could easily recognize their perpetual, in most of the cases they tend to fuck up. And अभी काफी ज्यादा revolution चल रहा है इसके अराउंड की, ठीक है, how we can kind of trust people or trust these accounts. So it can turn lethal in that. We should definitely check this TEDx talk. So now comes certain solutions and how we can kind of proactively live our life in the most optimal way and not be not alter the memories as per our convenience. So number one is maintaining a diary, and maybe kind of reading it every weekend can be a really helpful activity. So winners basically are not people who just constantly execute है, जिनके सारे टाइम आगे लगे रहते हैं, ये करो वो करो वही करो, right? Instead they take the time to introspect and try to come in line with their core values कि why did we started this thing in the first place, are we drifting from these things? Because what happens in life usually when a lot of things come up, you kind of romanticize your past and like आप अपनी memories बदलते रहते हैं, so there might be a heavy chance that you fuck up with your core values, and then you see in the long run it does not give you that satisfaction, like you get entangled with what you started with so much love, so much joy. So one other concept can be from this is like you should define your core values. So there's this content creator called Shweta, and he had written this book called the rudest book ever, in which he talks about this concept of considering yourself a nation. मतलब आप एक नेशन की तरह, सो जिस तरह से एक नेशन की लेट्स से मॉरल वैल्यूज होती हैं, पुलिस फोर्सेस और उस टाइप की चीज़ें, या कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, you should also have a constitution that is like slash core or moral values in your heart, like कि ये दो तीन स्पेसिफिक चीजें जिनके अगेंस्ट मैं कभी नहीं जाऊंगा, ये स्पेसिफिक चीजें कि आई एम मेकिंग दिस पॉलिसी और लाइक स्टार्टिंग दिस प्रोजेक्ट इन माय लाइफ XYZ जो भी है. So you can extrapolate this concept. This is just a high level idea. The second thing is like don't make people criminals on first impressions. Always question your first impressions because वो usually emotion से driven होता है. Don't rely on news channels. So I've already talked about this video. You can just check it here in the card, wherein I talk like do a in detail case study as to why you should not rely on these bloody channels, because in short they sell you stories based on first accounts without even properly investigating the true causes, because they are there to run a business and they want to sell you stuff on your emotions. So, like, George Bernard Shaw used to say that when a dog bites a man, it is not news. But when a man bites a dog, it is news. Something unusual, something that should not be, has to be reported. Only then are people thrilled. People live on negativity. And, like, the consumer kind of decides because he purchases. So, has subtle जो सबसे grossest या एकदम सबसे basic needs होती है, they have to be fulfilled. So you should kind of look life fresh every moment. So just some concluding thoughts. I would just like to conclude with this one quote from Osho on history, because history is also memory, and this really hits me very hard. I would just like to share it with you. So he says that all history is rubbish because it is written by the victorious. It is not true. It has nothing to do with the truth. It is simply one standpoint, the standpoint of the one who has become victorious. If the other party had won, history would have been totally different. If Adolf Hitler had won, then Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin would have been war criminals. Then history would have been totally different. Then these people would have been proven that they were aggressive people and Adolf Hitler was the savior of humankind. But now, because he has lost the war, he is a criminal. The other criminals have become heroes. They are all criminals, in fact. So, this quote hits me very deeply because it always talks about having a nuanced thinking in your mind rather than seeing things as black and white. So, yeah, that's a small video which I wanted to do. Let me know what you feel about it, and any comments, suggestions would be appreciated. So, hoping to hear your feedback. This is Debashish Pindra from Debukidastak signing off. Cheers.